Testing, testing. This congregation joins with all other UUs in the tradition of striking the gong 3 times, once in memory of those who have gone before, once in honor of those here today, and once for the future. Sean? Thank you, Sean. That was lovely. Good morning. Welcome to the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist Congregation, the church that puts its faith in you. This is a place where you can be yourself, but not by yourself. Whomever you are, whoever you love, and however you describe yourself or name the holy, you are welcome here. I'm Martha Sincula. I'm your service leader today. We're so glad that you are here with us. And I especially watch those watching from home and also those who are visiting for the first time. Please stay after service for coffee and tea and conversation so we can get to know each other better. If you happen to have one of these with you, please be so kind as to push those magic buttons and turn it off. Thank you. I'd like to thank our greeters, Al and Mary Herring. I'd like to thank Jake, our media guy, Sean, our music guy, and Annan, who does a lot of things around here, and Jen in the office for putting this service together. Again, thanks to every one of you who are here with us today and for caring to keep this very important space vital. We also acknowledge the people who came before us on this land called the Umpqua, for the river that flows through it, and for whose name graces our congregation. Here for thousands of years, loving this land and living in harmony, the Umpqua are still giving us gifts of action and wisdom. We make this land acknowledgement in recognition of the Umpqua and in beginning an atonement for harms done, part of the path towards healing. We are again delighted to have Dennis Reynolds, who is now serving our congregation as an interim developmental minister. His office hours are Tuesdays from 1 to 4. He brings us an extensive ministerial background, humor and insight, and is eager to meet and work with all of us. He's focusing on committees, administration, those things to help our congregation grow and thrive. We are grateful for his guidance and opportunity. For announcements, please refer to your order of service. There are things in that tells you what's going on. And today, importantly, we are having our annual congregational meeting for members. It's a really important business meeting to go over all kinds of things that are conducive to running this congregation. We will be having a luncheon in the interim, and we will convene. I'm not quite sure exactly what we planned, but we will convene within a reasonable time to give people a chance to eat. I don't have any other thing. Laleen, did you want to say something? I don't know where you are. Oh, there you are.
There are a stack of materials across the back. If you are a member after the service, please pick up starting on that end. One of each of the stack for yourself. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And it's good to see some smiling faces that we haven't seen for a while. And welcome to all of these who are here for the first time. Now in the time of our service where we do collect money and food for our fish food pantry. And I know that Annan is available, and do we have another person to help collect? We do have little people who could take a basket and help collect. Would any of you over here? Would your children like to help? Oh, we've got one. Okay, we've got a helper. All right, perfect. Now, well, I guess not. This is a family favorite. Usually children like to do this, but sometimes we get a little shy. In the paper, J.C. handed this to me. The Fish of Roseburg and Project Dash are celebrating 1 year of partnership, and you can find more about it by calling a number. We will put this up on the bulletin board. So they have a partnership in delivering emergency food and supplies to those who are housebound and unable to get to the pantry. So that's a wonderful addition to our project. Thank you. Dennis?
I'll give you a little inside peek in the inner workings of worship. I normally preach from my pad, but I just opened it right now and it said, initiating update. So, I'm a little old school this morning. Remember paper?
I had paper all the time.
The words of our chalice lighting. I have a backup copy in
But
paper.
it's right here in
Yep.
big print.
All right. The words of our chalice lighting are from Reverend Christine Robinson.
We gather this hour as people of faith.
With joys and sorrows, gifts and needs.
We light this beacon of hope.
Sign of our quest for truth and meaning.
In celebration of the life we share together.
I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit. It's hymn number 361. 354 comes later. Enter, rejoice, come in. The lyrics will also be projected.
rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in.
I like that particular version's little ending chord. Wing. I have a story I'd like to share, and though I am very adamant about calling them stories for all ages, I'm very glad there's some younger people here that may want to, if you want to come closer, you're pretty close to see the pictures. That's an option, but the book will be around later, okay, if you want to take a look at the illustrations. The book I'd like to share, the story I'd like to share this morning is In the Night Kitchen by Maurice Sendak. In the Night Kitchen by Maurice Sendak. He's both the illustrator and the writer of the words. And it's dedicated to Sadie and Philip. That always makes me curious who Sadie and Philip might be. I don't know. Did you ever hear of Mickey, how he heard a racket in the night? Thump, bump, clump, lump, and shouted, "Quiet down there!" And he fell through the dark and out of his clothes, past the moon and his mama and papa sleeping tight. And you can see in the illustration, he calls out, "Mama, Papa," into the light of the night kitchen. Where the bakers who bake till the dawn so we can have cake in the morning mixed Mickey in batter, chanting. Yes, there he is in the batter. Milk in the batter, milk in the batter, stir it, scrape it, make it, bake it. Let's try that together. Milk in the batter, milk in the batter, stir it, scrape it, make it, bake it. Thank you. And they put that batter up to bake a delicious Mickey cake. But right in the middle of the steaming and the making and the smelling and the baking, Mickey popped through and said, "I'm not the milk, and the milk's not me. I'm Mickey." So he skipped from the oven and into bread dough, all ready to rise in the night kitchen. He kneaded and punched it and pounded and pulled till it looked okay. Then Mickey in dough was just on his way. What did he make with the dough? What does it look like to you? Looks to me like he made a bread airplane. when the bakers ran up with a measuring cup, howling, "Milk, milk, milk for the morning cake." "What's all the fuss? I'm Mickey the pilot. I'll get milk the Mickey way." And he grabbed the cup as he flew up. And up and up and up and up and over the top of the Milky Way in the night kitchen. There he is, up on top of the Milky Way. Mickey the milkman dived down to the bottom singing, "I'm in the milk's in me. God bless milk and God bless me." Then he swam to the top, pouring milk from his cup into the batter below. So the bakers, they mixed it and beat it and baked it. "Milk in the batter, milk in the batter. We bake cake and nothing's the matter." Now Mickey in the night kitchen cried, "Cock-a-doodle-doo." Let's try that one together. "Cock-a-doodle-doo." And he slid down the side. "Yawn," he says. Straight into bed, carefree and dried. And he says, "Oh, ho, hum, yum." And that's why, thanks to Mickey, we have cake every morning. And now we'll sing our kids downstairs for some program time.
Now's the time in our services when we remember our joys and concerns with silent or spoken candle lighting, including significant milestones in our lives. We want to include those at home to participate. I invite those who wish to light a candle, silent or spoken, to please form a line to my right. And for those with spoken candles, give your name and please be brief. Thank you. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds that we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation, and may we give in love and in hope. For the gifts which we have received, may we be truly grateful, and may we be committed to using these gifts to make a difference in the world and to expand our beloved community.
I want to invite you now to just take a deep breath and settle in, to become even more fully present in this place and in this moment of now. And I want to share a simple, repetitive breathing mantra, if you will, that's set to music in our hymnal called a meditation on breathing therein. But we're not going to sing it, we're just going to say it. Because I discovered how powerful this simple mantra can be when I was working as a hospital chaplain, and I came into the room of a very, very anxious patient whose respiratory issues were not helped by her anxiety and her anxious breathing. And I repeated this mantra with her and invited her to breathe with me. And her calming echoes in me each time I repeat this mantra with others. It's simply, when I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. Peace. Love. Simply breathing. And breathing made deeper and slower and more significant by the fact that we are breathing together. Now Sean and Glennis will gift us with a song of love.
Are there any hippies in this room? Old hippies, young hippies, new hippies? Okay, so you might know this song. Feel free to jump right in. Let's get together. Love is but a song we sing, and fear's the way we die. You can make the mountains ring, or make the angels cry. Though the bird is on the wing, and you may not know why. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let us love one another right now. Now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let us love one another right now. Some will come and some will go. We shall surely pass. When the one that left us here returns for us at last, we are but a moment's sunlight fading in the grass. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let us love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let us love one another right now. If you hear the song I sing, you will understand. You own the key to love and fear in your trembling hand. Just one key unlocks them both. It's there at your command. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let us love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Let us love one another right now. Let us love one another right now. Let us love right, thank you.
Martha, why don't you just hang on there? I'm looking at clock, and we're moving along in time, and we're going to have a more extended morning together this morning with the annual meeting following the service. And I'm going to suggest that was an appropriate reading for this morning and the content that I want to talk about, because, you know, that's what I'm going to talk about, is how we love one another. And I'm going to use some metaphor. As many of you know, during COVID, I became a baker, specifically a sourdough guy. I brought bread to a number of gatherings here, and an artisan loaf has become my go-to for almost any potluck I get invited to these days. And I brought some to share with you this morning. But here in UU, we don't share bread during the service. It'll be part of the lunch. Now, I relish and take pride in the product of my baking. But, you know, I gain more from the process of baking bread. Doing bread gives me as much pleasure as eating bread. Baking sourdough bread has become a form of religious practice. Baking offers me lessons every time I do it. It, like most important things in life, requires that I do pre-planning and preparation. I do need to make sure that I've got some flour and salt on hand. It makes me slow down. It takes several hours to feed the starter, followed by 8+ hours in a primary rise, some messing with the dough, and then an equal 8 to 10 hours or so for a secondary rise. Only then, and only then, do I put it in the oven at 450 for 20 minutes covered and 20 more minutes uncovered. Then, if the internal temperature is at about 185 degrees, it's done, if enough heat has been generated within. Yet it's not quite ready to eat, because it still needs some time to just sit there and cool, so it will be firm enough to slice. I find the whole thing kind of magical and a bit of a miracle. Each time I watch how a bit of salt, a few cups of flour, and some water, when blended with some naturally occurring bacteria, becomes dough. Dough which, when heated, becomes something tasty and nutritious. I am a bit awed by the transformation that occurs. Each time, my artisan loaf, on the other hand, is made to be consumed. It's supposed to go away. If it's not eaten in a few days, it grows moldy or stale. That ephemeral quality of a loaf of bread is another thing that I deeply appreciate. It's not an object to hold on to grasp and hang on to, or to be displayed. It's simply for eating. It is transitory. And when it is eaten, it becomes part of me. It quite literally feeds my body, just as the process has fed my soul. And it feeds others. And as a bonus, when I get compliments, it feeds my hungry ego. Each loaf is linked to loaves I've made before, as they all emerge from a jar of starter that I carefully nurture and feed. I have shared my starter and my baking tips with others. Several friends are now sourdough bakers. I even took some starter to my son who lives in England. It's a gift I get to share, just as several years ago it was shared with me. I got my original starter from my Eugene church friend, Jean Marie. She made it by carefully tending a flour-water mixture over a period of a week and just let it sit there. Then when it became bubbly, she fed it so it would grow, and later she gave some to me. Composed of fermented flour and water, a sourdough starter is a leavening agent that you don't get from the grocery store. It's a naturally occurring yeast and bacteria that make baked goods rise. A sourdough starter is a living organism and requires cultivation and maintenance. When properly fed, sourdough starters live for years and give life to endless loaves of bread. Because sourdough starters depend on strains of naturally occurring airborne yeast and bacteria, no two sourdough starters are exactly alike. Jean Marie's and my starter are part of a unique lineage, a tradition perhaps. The metaphor that the process of nurturing and sharing starter, and of baking and sharing bread offer to me countless lessons about patience and perseverance, and a regular reminder that transformation is possible. Transformation is possible. It just requires attention and some effort. And as in the case of many things, the most important ingredient is time. Transformation is what sourdough bread is all about. Transformation is what church is all about. My home church in Eugene has a short, simple, yet infinitely challenging mission statement. It reads, "Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve the world." We recite it every Sunday morning. Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve the world. Now, for me, that love it calls us to is a kind of mother dough. That love is the core value of our Universalist theology. Now, such love is not the kind of love that are portrayed in fiction or in TV dramas. It's not romantic love. It is a love that's more deeply grounded and profoundly and deeply grounding. It's a love that has existed since before the beginning and will never let you go. Now, some label such love as divinity or as the holy or spirit. Perhaps you call it spirit of life, or you might name it by any of a plethora of various names, or you might choose not to name it at all. For many of us, that deeper and wider love is best experienced within a beloved community. The notion of beloved community was something often expressed aspirationally by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who hoped to develop more of that beloved community in our larger culture, a kind of love he had experienced his entire life in church. Here in this congregation, we make to seek that ideal of beloved community real. Such grounded love is expressed in action in the principles of our faith that all member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association have covenanted to affirm and promote. If you haven't read it for a while, I want to remind you it's on the back of the order of service every Sunday. Check it out from time to time. I go back for little refreshers. And as you may recall from a sermon I shared here on Easter Sunday, which is online, if you haven't heard it yet, it's saved there on YouTube, I discussed how those values which are embedded within the official bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association may change at the General Assembly that's coming up later this month. Jake, we're going to go to that slide now. The new proposed statement looks like this. Are we ready? Okay, if you were here, you may remember that one. It centers love, a chalice of love, a flame of love, and surrounding it as a petal of our values that are stated as justice, interdependence, equity, generosity, pluralism, and there we are again, transformation. In this new version, love is again centered. No question, we have visual evidence. This kind of love is a love that does not die. It's a love so wide you can't get around it. A love so high you can't get over it. A love so low you can't get under it. There's only one way to get in, and what's that? At the door, right? And maybe that's the door they're talking about, the door to this space, the door to this community. It is a love that does not die. And I've experienced such love here in this sanctuary, and no doubt many of you have felt its warmth and its power. Many Sundays like today, you can feel it glow during the share of joys and concerns. I felt that special kind of never-ending love a few weeks ago down there in the Memorial Garden when singing Spirit of Life, we spread the ashes of a beloved friend and member of this congregation. I felt it last Sunday on the streets of downtown Roseburg during the Pride Parade, when many of us walked in solidarity with a whole community. Man, and if you had seen the joy in the faces of young people who could be fully out and supported in their hometown, it was palpable. Love in action. You know, I cannot touch it or hold it in my hand, but I leave deeply in such love because I felt it within. Now, there's an old adage that says seeing is believing, but when it comes to emotions, when it comes to love, feeling is believing. Like a loaf of sourdough bread, a loving, caring community emerges over time from simple materials and from the natural processes that feed love. Now, since we're talking about this bread this morning, I feel compelled to acknowledge the profound symbolic importance that bread holds within the Christian faith. Most especially in the ritual of communion. Now, communion in that tradition rose from the accounts of the Last Supper that Jesus had with his disciples on the eve of his trial and ultimate crucifixion. As reported in the book of Matthew, while they're eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body." It's a powerful metaphor that many take literally. In the Catholic Church, it's affirmed by the American Council of Bishops, who stated that the transformed bread and wine are truly the body and blood of Christ and not merely symbols. When Christ said, "This is my body," and "This is my bread," the bread and the wine are transubstantiated. Though the bread and the wine appear to our human faculties the same, they are actually the real body and blood of Jesus. To a true believer, that is the truth. Transubstantiation, that miraculous transformation of bread to flesh, to the divine incarnate in the flesh, is the kind of miracle that religious skeptics like myself find difficult to accept. So we tend to reject it. Unfortunately, in rejecting the literal truth of such a story, we miss the powerful metaphor that many biblical scholars think was and is the point of this story. John Dominic Crossan, who I've quoted here before in his book, Who is Jesus?, wrote, "My point again is not that those ancient peoples told literal stories and were now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally." Crossan is a New Testament scholar, historian, and a former Catholic priest. His research focused on the historical Jesus and the theology of the Christian Gospels as stories rather than absolute truth. The stories found in the books of the Hebrew Bible and the Christian New Testament are valuable and profoundly meaningful teaching stories. When we reject them entirely because we question whether they are literally true, we end up throwing out the baby Jesus and the teacher he became along with the bathwater. We know that the Rabbi Jesus himself often used metaphorical stories called parables to invite his listeners to think deeply about a subject or a situation. The story of the Good Samaritan is probably the best known of those parables. The stories are metaphors. And bread, the nearly miraculous substance that's feed us, and so many things in the awesome super reality of the natural world also offer us powerful metaphors on which to ponder the possibilities of what might feed one spiritually. I do want to note that I said ponder possibilities and not find the truth. As one is looking for a minister to proclaim from the pulpit an absolutely unquestionable truth, then this would be the wrong church and the wrong minister. But if one is looking for a church where professional clergy and other speakers engage with the conversation, and the congregants engage with each other to explore diverse paths of spirituality, then they will find welcome here. Now, I've shared here before about how 8 years ago I had a serious life-threatening illness that led to me being sedated and intubated for 4 days. Because I'm a seeker afterwards, I decided to find a Jungian therapist to see if we might tap into some of what might have been going on in my subconscious when I was unconscious. I looked for a Jungian because Carl Jung, that intrepid explorer of the human psyche, had lifted up both the importance of the metaphorical messages woven into the fabric of Christian stories and in the teaching stories that our own dreams may gift us with. So I looked online and I found a nearby therapist with good reviews. From my first visit, I liked him a lot. I soon discovered that he was like Crossan, a former priest, who after leaving the priesthood and marrying the love of his life, had gone back to school to train as a Jungian psychologist. We had a number of thought-provoking sessions, and we never did find out what had been going in my subconscious when I was in an extended coma, but we did explore some of my dreams. One in particular was especially memorable. In my dream, my wife Suzanne and I had taken up operating a business that made and distributed burritos. The therapist listened intently, as any good therapist would, and asked some clarifying questions, some of which prompted me to bring up a few more details of the story. Then he sat back and pondered for a while. Then he said, "I think it might somehow be a dream about communion." And perhaps it is about how, as a clergy person, I might be trying to figure out about how best to help meet people's spiritual needs. He also offered the observation that offering someone a burrito would be much more nourishing than would be giving them a simple dry wafer and a little sip of wine. We both chuckled about that one. And though I'm still not sure about his interpretation, I appreciate that he offered it as a possibility, not an absolute, but an interpretation I might consider. He helped me to remember to look within for metaphorical stories that might offer possibilities. I did not continue to see him for very long because I found once again that I can best find spiritual grounding not in one-on-one interactions, but in groups, in community. Be it interfaith groups or Unitarian Universalist congregations or in the Buddhist Sangha I became part of back then. And whether I do it in my garden or in my dreams or in community or in the kitchen when I bake bread, I am blessed to have many, many opportunities to explore possibilities. We are gifted here in this beloved community with endless opportunities to see how we might together grow and transform ourselves and better serve our world. May we forever make that so. And this is traditionally in this congregation a time for a bit of a conversation, if you wish.
Yeah, now is the time for you to have a question or a comment. I see a hand over here. One of our sages, Bessie.
I think that burrito metaphor is so wonderful because what you think about what goes into a burrito, it's everything. So, I mean, there's beans and you name it, it's there. Corn and
I mean, I guess he learned something in, graduate school as he was becoming a Jungian therapist.
It's a hodgepodge of what life is about.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to have a statement, question?
Sometimes a little spicy.
Anyone?
And then you got Larry over here after Sharon.
Oh, okay. Sharon and then Larry. All right. Here you go.
My jury's still out on that, but I'm really happy to see that love is at the center of it. When I became a UU 49 years ago, it was more thoughts than from the heart. And so for me, this is the way to connect with other people, and I'm very, very glad to see it. Lived in Idaho, which, as you know, is quote unquote Mormon country. And when somebody goes, from the beginning, that faith, that system, was based on connection and growth and love. And from the beginning, as I understand it, Unitarianism was based on thought. So, I mean, would never advocate that we become like the LDS faith, but I think centering it more on love is the way to ensure that we go on together as a faith. And
Right,
I'm very, very grateful for it. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Sharon. And I think in particular that heightened emphasis on love comes from our Universalist tradition, that comes from a Christian notion of a loving God who would never condemn anyone to damnation. That's what universalism is about universal salvation. So we gain that. And, well, I'm going to do the quick version. We are UU, the Church of the Open Mind, the loving heart, and the caring hands. I think it's those heart and mind that fuel who we aspire to be and act in. Larry.
Yeah. Thank you, Reverend Dennis. If love is the way to our greater selves and community, how do we deal with those moments when we find ourselves in doubt and fear? Or do we need enough love that overcomes that doubt and fear?
My answer would be both. I have a colleague who describes himself, and I've embraced this label, I'm a both-andian. Sometimes we just have to sit with the reality of fear. And some people would say that's an interpretation of what the first noble truth of Buddhism that says life is dukkha. Life is everything. Life is troubling things. Life is unfulfilled expectations. And if we grasp too hard to hope or to fear, it's a problem. So we want to acknowledge that both of those exist and sit with it and give greater weight to love. And that's what we get to do together. When it's a lot easier to do together than it is to be by ourselves. Quite frankly, standing in front of that other church's judgmental signs during the Pride Parade was way easier when there was a whole bunch of us there together, right? And those young people who were expressing their true identities could do so because we were present lovingly with them.
Yes.
So that's, where the work, Cornel West is the one who says justice is what love looks like in action. And that's who we aspire to be, and sometimes we are, but we try to be so a little more often. But at any rate, so.
You think
Okay.
we should wrap it up?
Yeah, we should wrap
Is
it up.
anyone else?
But, and even though we're running a little long, I know you folks have given me the liberty to go a little long because you're not confined to those narrow Eurocentric notions of clock time. Let's rise in body or in spirit as we sing, we laugh, we cry. And because the recording does all the verses, we're going to do all the verses together.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends. We can go our way.
closing words of benediction that are from the Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all.
There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered, and the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others once felt. It inspires us to act for justice.
It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community.
It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community.
Oh, we got to mix. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be done, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together our vision widens and our strength is renewed. So we extinguish the chalice. Shalom, salam, amen, and blessed be. And is the tradition of this congregation, we close with Go Lift It Up. Go in peace, go in love, but we hope most of you aren't going too far away because we have a meeting this afternoon after some lunch. So let's break bread together first.